Welcome everyone. Today we're going to be learning a bit more about PACE, which is Property Assessed Clean Energy Financing. I'm going to start with a poll just to get a feel for the room. How much do you already know about PACE? 1 being, I don't know very much, just learning, really here to get some more information, and 5 being, I'm pretty familiar, I know how it works. I could tell somebody about PACE and they would walk away knowing, having a good understanding of it. So I'll just let those results come in. We've got a few answers. So if you're having any challenges answering that poll, definitely let me know. Awesome. Okay, so we've got most people. So I'm going to end the polling and share the results. So we've got a room here that is still learning, which is good. By the end of hopefully at the end of this hour, everyone's going to be a 5. So get ready to be PACE experts. So this event is the culmination of a lot of work from different leading building and environmental organizations across the province who have recognized that there's a need for greater access to energy efficiency. And we know that PACE is a really fantastic tool to meet that need. This campaign has been brought together by organizations like RISE, Envigour, EOS Eco Energy, Efficiency Canada, the Conservation Council of New Brunswick, Quest, really just a long list of organizations who have stepped up to try and push PACE forward in the province. We've also had support from all the organizations who have signed on in support, from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, who have helped us start to reach out to municipalities and help them learn how to take those next steps with PACE. So this is, it's not a one-man show. There's a lot of folks here who have come together to make this happen. And so today we all get to learn why all of these organizations are so excited about PACE. We think it's a really unique opportunity for the province and something that we actually could achieve. The province is currently holding consultations to update and improve the province's relationship with municipalities. If at the end of this call, you're interested in PACE and you want to see it made possible here in New Brunswick, you can sign on in support of our submission or reach out directly to the province and let them know that it's something that you want to see happening here in New Brunswick. So I'll share the link in the chat once we get things going. But first, before you're going to do that, you need to know what it is. And so if you do find that you have questions throughout the presentation, just save them. We're going to have questions at the end after both of our speakers have spoken. So keep those in mind. You can put them in the Q&A box or in the chat, and we will get to those at the end of the call. But to kick things off, we are going to start with Bruce Cameron, who is here from Envigour Consulting. And so Bruce, I will let you take things away and start introducing everyone to PACE.
Thanks very much. This is a great opportunity to have a discussion about the value of property assessed clean energy as a model to help advance the efficiency agenda, and more specifically, to discuss it in the context of what is happening in New Brunswick today. Brief background on me. I worked for many years with the Nova Scotia Department of Energy and working with my colleagues across Atlantic Canada and across Canada on many things dealing with energy, including energy efficiency, and the work that has been done in Nova Scotia over the last 20 years has been very much a matter of my attention and I would say at times my leadership as well. So what I want to do is talk to you a little bit today about the context in New Brunswick. New Brunswick government has made a commitment to bring in PACE at some point. The role of the financing in community energy plans, because a lot of municipalities have been involved in community energy planning in New Brunswick. Overview of PACE and what it is in Canada today, and how that fits in and why it's important for municipalities and communities. And then sketch out a bit of a policy framework for PACE in New Brunswick for consideration by the government of New Brunswick. And what would follow from a policy framework is how do you actually implement it, and implementation through legislation is what we would likely require in New Brunswick today, and then the next steps. So walking through that, New Brunswick's Climate Action Plan notes the real opportunity it comes in New Brunswick from an investment in efficiency. 25,000 full-time jobs. It's a tremendous industry and raised GDP in New Brunswick by nearly $5 billion. And that's just the opportunity that comes with making all of the buildings more efficient, bringing in beneficial electrification and improvements in all of our lives from an energy, a climate, and also from a comfort, health point of view. And the New Brunswick Climate Action Plan also talked about a commitment that said that if it's viable, use PACE as a means of financing for private property owners. So there is a commitment there, and this climate action plan was committed to by the present government of New Brunswick. So we think that that is very important, that we're talking about things that the government of New Brunswick is interested in pursuing. When we look at the PACE is about financing. I mean, at the end of the day, it really is a way to more securely finance investments in energy efficiency and related kinds of projects that are associated with beneficial electrification. And really, it is important because to get the financing right, because they are a key element of those investment decisions. You make investments in energy efficiency, you need to match the kind of term of the financing, because it's not a matter of how quickly I can get it paid back, but it's how soon and from the beginning can I actually save money. And often what you need to do is look at the investment may pay back for years, decades. And you need to be able to say, well, okay, if I can match the financing to that, then you should end up cash positive from day one. And that's the objective of something like PACE. It's providing long-term financing, very secured, low interest costs, and benefits that come to you immediately. You should be immediately better off by making that investment. And so property assessed clean energy financing, by having the financing attached to the property and secured to the property, is something that's emerging in Canada as a very, very important tool in getting the job done. So many provinces in Canada already have PACE legislation. What they've basically done is piggybacked on existing provisions within energy municipal government acts, local government in New Brunswick, and it would be the equivalent. And they use the tools that are already in that legislation to say, let's stretch it a little bit and talk about investments, not just in water and sewer, but also investments in local building upgrades and beneficial electrification. Again, electrification that benefits the community, the climate, the environment, and the utilities. And what it does is by putting a high priority lien on the property, it means that the cost of financing is going to be less because the lenders feel secure. And other lenders shouldn't be upset because you should end up with a situation where you actually have more money through this. So you would have your regular mortgage perhaps, and you put on a PACE lien, and what you end up with is savings that exceed the cost of the new investment. So nobody should be upset about that. And it really improves the economics of the project if you're able to get low-cost financing for an extended period of time. And it generally reduces the barriers to adoption by homeowners, because a lot of homeowners go, yes, but, I'm interested in, but where am I going to get the money to do this? And some of them have access to things like lines of credit, but when you really look at it, some of these investments can be relatively expensive, might stretch the line of credit. And in any case, the line of credit is almost always floating interest rates. PACE gives you an opportunity to lock in long-term, low-cost financing for the whole term of the investment. So right now, the government of Canada is very supportive of all of this. They've put money out there to lower the cost of projects up to $5,000, a government grant, do home energy assessments, and they put $300 million into PACE through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. And that really makes PACE a lot more attractive. And we'll have a lot more detail on that particular program in the next presentation. But, I would argue that there's never been a better time than the present to invest in energy efficiency, both from a savings point of view and from an environmental point of view. So when you look at what it is that why the government of New Brunswick would support PACE and what it would like to see that do, is you would start off with the idea of the scope of all of this is certain technologies that reduce or lower the cost of energy and the carbon footprint of that energy. Certainly, it's an issue as we face rising price of carbon. We're going to be looking for fuels that are more renewable and more lower carbon footprint, and those systems may evolve as well. But what we're looking for is a policy environment that says these are the things that we're trying to do. We're trying to reduce carbon, lower the cost for homeowners. And we're also looking at building types here. And as a policy framework, it can start off with looking at homeowners because that's what almost everybody has done. But there is a real opportunity to set a policy that also builds into commercial structures, multiple residential buildings, apartments, and so on and so forth. You can take a foundation of PACE and build it as high as you want. And our recommendation is to focus on PACE. There are other forms of financing for efficiency. And I've looked at many of those through some work for the Office of Energy Efficiency in Ottawa and looked at it. But there is something really compelling with being able to make a direct relationship with a homeowner, lowest cost capital, and no one else has to borrow the money in between. And that's a very attractive feature of this if you get it right. So the legal framework that we're suggesting is that the New Brunswick government implement legislation and get authority for an energy efficiency and beneficial electrification financing regime. That's what I call it. But it's really PACE. And if you set that overall legal framework under provincial law, you would have as an objective to ensure that their provincial and local objectives are aligned in PACE program offerings, and to have regulations for a new form of lien, energy saving specific lien. And that would be the purpose of all of this as an overall framework. And you would also have general provincial law setting out what is eligible, some verification in place, and expected outcomes. And the whole idea would be that you design all your projects so that people are going to be better off. This isn't a framework that can allow any airy-fairy scheme to come along. The province would have responsibility to make sure that all the programs meet these broad objectives. But what you'd also want to have is you'd want to have municipalities deliver the projects. You'd want to deliver the programs and to have the leadership in each community to integrate with all of their community energy savings plans. And to operate the program directly or in collaboration with others or through a contracted third party. And this is a really important issue in a province like New Brunswick, but indeed we're finding it across Canada that there's this real issue of municipal capacity to run these kinds of programs. And there's starting to emerge some very sophisticated players in all of this who have run programs in the past and can do it on a basis of a collection of municipalities. And these groups are being funded, and quite frankly, disclosure, I'm part of one of those companies that's in a third-party administrator kind of role. And we're doing it for multiple municipalities. And it's a really good solution because you get the expertise without having to take on all the responsibilities of new hires and the cost of a little municipality getting that expertise. And then you'd want to set up that there is a municipal program in order to get an energy savings lien, a PACE kind of environment. The next steps, well, there's a number of government departments with an interest in this in New Brunswick, from environment and local government, natural resources, where the energy policy responsibility lies, and the Department of Finance, because departments of finance are very interested in how capital is raised, and they have competency in that area. They're very good at determining whether there's a good environment, and they may play a very helpful role in ultimately raising private capital through green bonds and so on. So there's a really exciting opportunity if you get all three of these government departments involved. And we're just asking them to sit down and consult with us to talk through how this PACE idea can go forward, and quite frankly, allow us to make the case for PACE now better than ever. Thanks very much.
Perfect. Thank you, Bruce. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to fill the air for a minute or two, and I would really encourage everyone to take this as a moment to stretch, to get a glass of water, to do whatever you need to take a break in the middle of, with all these virtual events happening, it can be a bit easy to zone out or to struggle to focus, I think, for these hour-long events. So I would really encourage you, take a stretch, maybe roll your head. If you don't have a glass of water or coffee, whatever can get you through the afternoon, definitely take this as a moment to do what you got to do. I do want to echo something Bruce said. There's never really been a better time for PACE. Everyone that we've spoken to, every conversation we've had, every response we've gotten has said, yes, New Brunswick is ready. We need this. We're ready to open that door. So I really appreciate everyone coming to this event today to learn more, get familiar with PACE and the opportunity that it offers to us. So I hope everyone's had a bit of a second to get recentered, ready to hear from Jasmine. So to introduce our second speaker, it is Jasmine Bradet. She's with the outreach, or she is the outreach programs officer at the Green Municipal Fund, and she's going to fill us in on, what would happen next? What can municipalities do, and how can we actually make this happen? So Jasmine, with that, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Kirsten. I'm just going to share my screen and hope it works. Let's try this. Do you see the title screen?
Yes, you are good to go.
Great. So hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. I'm speaking with you today. As Kirsten mentioned, I'll be talking about what are financing programs for home energy upgrades, more generally speaking than Bruce, and try and hone in on how they can benefit communities at the local scale. So as you may already know, a significant portion of greenhouse gas emissions come from energy use in the built environment. So if your municipality has adopted its own local climate change action plan, buildings are likely one of the top 2 priority areas for action alongside transportation. And considering that buildings are around for decades, if not centuries, tackling energy use in the existing building stock is essential to achieving today's emissions targets. So improving the energy performance of existing buildings is great for the environment, but it's also a tremendous opportunity to make the places we live and work more comfortable, more affordable, and healthier overall. So in looking at the residential sector, statistics show that the majority of homes in Canada were built before the introduction of modern building codes. So as a result, the average Canadian single-family dwelling consumes about 20% more energy than new homes built today. And what that means is, on average, residents in these older homes pay about $300 more per year on their utility bills. So there's certainly an incentive to make the housing stock more energy efficient. And as Bruce alluded to, some homeowners may already be looking into energy upgrades on their own, but local financing programs can really help encourage residential retrofits on a much larger scale and in a much more coordinated way. So in light of the challenge that lies ahead over the coming years, in order to achieve net zero emissions by 2050, communities will need to continue to prioritize actions that will help tackle climate change and drive significant savings in energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions. So financing programs for home energy upgrades can play an important role in achieving this, while also leading a sustainable post-pandemic economic recovery. So the time that we find ourselves in now is really an interesting time to start looking at this. In addition to improving the energy performance of existing homes, financing programs can also be used to promote other kinds of renovations that make for better homes overall, and that includes climate adaptation measures to protect homes against extreme weather events, water conservation, accessibility, and other health and safety improvements. So what exactly is a financing program for home energy upgrades? Well, at its core, it's a way of connecting homeowners with financing options and other supports and services so that they have everything they need to undertake renovations to improve the energy performance of their home. And depending on the kind of program in place, payments can actually be structured so that the cost savings resulting from the home improvements can be used to cover a portion or even the entirety of the investment over the long term, by using a mechanism like debt to savings ratio or other kinds of consumer protection measures. So some of the common models we often see include property assessed clean energy financing, or PACE for short. Bruce already went over this one, but essentially the key part is that the financing repayment is secured by a lien added to an individual's property tax assessment. When looking at the utility on-bill financing model, it's a little bit different, but it can still be an interesting option in certain communities because it allows homeowners to pay back their financing via their natural gas or electricity bill. A third option is the direct lending model, which is when a municipality works with a credit union, a bank, or other kind of financial institution to offer a customized financial offering, like a green loan. And typically those include more attractive rates and longer repayment terms than currently available on the market. So those are three main models supported or available out there. So at the same time, you may just be wondering, why then have we not seen more widespread programs for home energy upgrades across Canada until now? And one of the reasons for that has to do with the decision around whether to invest in home retrofits really lies on the shoulders of the homeowner. So even when they truly are interested in improving their home energy performance, there's a range of uncertainties and barriers that can discourage them from moving forward. And this can include anything from the high upfront costs of the renovations themselves to understanding which ones would be most beneficial, finding reliable contractors to do the work, making sense of how it'll impact their energy bills, and whether they will recoup their investment if they choose to eventually sell their property. So financing programs can address these barriers because they're designed to offer an easy, streamlined process for homeowners while reducing the uncertainty associated with many of these decisions. So what we more commonly see at the moment are rebate programs, I would say, and these are intended to bring down the total cost for homeowners by covering a portion of the cost of a specific piece of equipment or home energy audit. And so in comparison, a financing program is intended to cover the full upfront costs of the renovation, and it allows homeowners to gradually pay back their financing over time, usually by using their energy cost savings. So although incentives and rebate programs operate a little differently from financing programs, the two approaches are often complementary. Financing programs are able to lower the upfront costs of retrofits, like I mentioned, and improve the terms of repayment, while rebates drive down some of the costs themselves and can incentivize participation in a program. So with financing and rebates combined, home energy programs can make deep retrofits more feasible and more affordable for homeowners. It's also important to highlight that the financing component is only one part of a well-designed program. Administrators can play a key role in supporting homeowners at every stage of the retrofit journey by facilitating access to a range of resources and supports like qualified contractors and energy advisors, coaching services, and easy access to financing rebates and incentives. And this level of continued support helps homeowners not only navigate the renovation process, but it also increases their confidence about the expected results and quality of the work completed. So if you're starting to think about the possibility of developing a financing program in your community, I'll now be introducing the SEF initiative, which is one of our funding offers available at the Green Municipal Fund to help support projects like this. So as you may already know, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities is the national voice of local governments in Canada. And a key part of FCM's mandate includes delivering programs that build municipalities' capacity to do what they do best. And that is deliver innovative, cost-effective local solutions to environmental challenges in ways that enhance the quality of life for their citizens. So over the past 20 years, the Green Municipal Fund has become FCM's largest program, and it now includes 4 new initiatives: community efficiency financing, sustainable affordable housing, community buildings retrofit, and low carbon cities, all of which aim to achieve significant greenhouse gas emissions reductions at the local level. For the purposes of this presentation, I'll be focusing on the Community Efficiency Financing Initiative, or CEF for short. So the CEF initiative aims to encourage municipal action to accelerate energy efficiency and renewable energy investment by focusing on retrofits in the low-rise residential sector. CEF can be seen as a program of programs because it's intended to help municipalities establish a financing program, for instance, a PACE program, which can then support homeowners in their retrofit journey. And as mentioned, CEF is specifically designed to support programs that focus on existing low-rise residential properties, like detached, semi-detached, and row houses. In order to be eligible for CEF funding, programs also need to be geared towards improving the energy performance of homes, but can also include, to a lesser extent, non-energy improvements, including those to improve health and safety, increase water use efficiency, better adapt to climate change, and other alternatives like EV charging stations and battery storage. So often when a homeowner is undertaking deep retrofits, it's a great opportunity to fold in other kinds of home improvements. Lastly, as discussed, CEF supports innovative financing models like PACE or direct lending. So just because today's presentation is about PACE doesn't mean that we won't fund other kinds of projects. There's a few more things to keep in mind if you're thinking about pulling together a project proposal. The lead applicant can be a municipal government or a project partner applying with a municipality. So what counts as a municipal partner? Well, it can be anything from a municipally owned corporation, a nonprofit organization, or even a private sector firm. But they do need to demonstrate that there's been a committed partnership with a municipality that's been established. Homeowners can't apply directly to CEF, though they are the intended beneficiaries of these kinds of programs. And it's also worth noting that the federal, provincial, and territorial governments are ineligible to apply, but there can still be key actors in the delivery of a local financing program. Also keep in mind that a project proposal will need to be supported by other kinds of documentation that essentially just aims to confirm the project can be carried out as described. So just something to keep an eye out for. Now on this slide, we see that there's a rundown of the different kinds of funding available to support projects, no matter what stage they're at. The idea is we're here every step of the way. So within the study stream, applications are eligible for grants worth up to $175,000 to cover up to 80% of eligible costs. You may be interested in applying for a feasibility study if you're really in the early stages of exploring different kinds of financing models and assessing the market potential. Program design studies are often the next step, and they help to plan out the details of how to launch and implement a new program. And then lastly, evaluation studies are geared towards existing programs, either at the interim stage or at the very end, and are intended to help assess past performance and identify opportunities for improvement. Within the capitalization stream, so when you're in a place where you're ready to launch your program, there are a few funding options available, and depending on your program delivery model and context, one may be better suited to your needs. So we see that on the one hand, there's the loan option. So it would be a low interest loan worth up to $10 million. And then the other main option is the credit enhancement, which may be a new term for some of you, but it's really intended to act as a tool to leverage private capital. There's also some pilot program funding available worth up to $500,000 in the form of a grant, but this is really only on a limited basis for exceptional projects with clear market transformation potential. It's also worth noting that for the loan and the credit enhancement, we normally pair those with a grant worth up to half of the program's total capital needs, which is intended to be used to cover the program startup activities and its ongoing operations over a 4-year implementation period. It's also important to note that in addition to funding, the CEF initiative offers a suite of capacity building resources and activities to help communities design and deliver effective programs that are built on best practices and tailored to the local context. So to date, we've publicized an online resource library, a few fact sheets, and a CEF 101 mini video with a view to connect applicants with all the information they need to understand where they're headed and how best to design their program. GMF also offers help desk services so that applicants can work closely with our team to address any questions that may arise. And for the programs that do receive funding, the program administrators and other stakeholders benefit from having access to an online community of practice and other opportunities to connect and exchange with other municipalities who are at various stages of program implementation. So really to foster an atmosphere of learning and sharing and growing and finding out how best to deliver these programs. And we also offer subject matter experts to answer technical questions and bounce ideas off of. So if you're interested in learning a little more about this funding opportunity, please feel free to reach out to me at gmfinfo@fcm.ca or at the number shared on the screen. You can also access the CEF website at fcm.ca/community efficiency financing. And then to stay up to date on all of our funding programs and resources at FCM, please subscribe to our weekly newsletter. So that's it for me.
Awesome. Thank you, Jasmine. So that has been our speakers for today. I'm going to again remind everyone that we have our website link here. If you think this sounds interesting, if it's something that you want to sign on in support of, we do have our submission there, and I would encourage you to reach out to the province. Step 1 is getting the enabling legislation put in place at the provincial level, and we really need all hands on deck to do that with the opportunity that we have right now. But, for now, we have lots and lots of time for questions because we know PACE can be a bit tough to wrap your head around in the beginning. So if you have questions, probably somebody else in the room has that same question in mind. So we'd love to hear from you. Feel free to unmute your microphone to ask directly or put questions in the chat and I can moderate them. So I'll open the floor up here and see if anyone has any questions.
Kirsten, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, not sure exactly who's on the call, who they represent, but I just wanted to give a little background for the province. I've been working with the solar company for, the last 6 months. And as my understanding, I spoke with the Minister of Finance for the province, and they're looking into the PACE program because they would be the ones that would have to administer it. So there is some movement forward on that politically. I know the ex-mayor of Fredericton, Mike O'Brien, was trying to get the PACE program in Fredericton, and he was unable to because the province has some weird regulations that are different than the rest of Canada. But now we have a new mayor in Fredericton, so we'd have to address that with her and her new council. So there's some movement forward, but New Brunswick is not similar to, like, Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island have more incentives for solar and for EVs and stuff like that, whereas New Brunswick doesn't have as many. Anyway, so there is some discussion on it now, and I don't know if there's anyone on the call from the minister's office, Ernie Steves, the Minister of Finance, but we have had discussions with them. So if your group is able to reach out to them or whoever else, that would be great.
Yeah, so definitely great point. We're definitely trying to reach out to as many officials as we can to get the word to them. We're lucky that we have Bruce Cameron on the call, and he's put these programs in place in a few different provinces, and he's pretty familiar with the provincial framework. So Bruce, I'll just pass it to you to hear what you've got to say.
Sure. Jamie, you've raised a couple of interesting issues, ones that I've heard in the past about New Brunswick. And one of it is, oh, well, because PACE has the repayment scheme on property tax bills in New Brunswick, it's administered by the province, not by the communities and the municipalities. And so that's raised the issue of, well, okay, it won't work for us because the province does that. Well, we're about to launch in the next week or so in Prince Edward Island, where they have exactly the same regime. And what we've done is quite simply created a loan administration regime and software to be able to take money from the repayments from people's accounts, bank accounts every month. And it goes back and it applied to the loan. The software is out there. We cobbled it together in a program that's going to work beautifully. And you don't have to touch the province's property tax assessment system at all, except to figure out what the value of the property is to make sure you don't overinvest in it. So that's number one. Number two, the model that the province chooses to use in terms of enabling PACE is one thing, and they have an opportunity. They're opening up the Local Government Act, so they have an opportunity to make some legislative changes. But I do want to make this point. Financing really is, and Jasmine spoke about it, but it is really the core of it. Financing is only part of a successful energy efficiency program. And as it turns out, it's an important part. And you really can't have an integrated, we help you every step of the way kind of program if we can't help you finance it as well. So financing is important, but what is more important is this overall attitude of there's somebody there to help you navigate through all of this stuff that's out there that makes it complicated to do an energy efficiency upgrade, even to something as simple as a heat pump. It gets to be a little bit complicated, and you want to have somebody to trust to go to, but you also want to have somebody to navigate it and do the paperwork for you. So it's not complicated and it's not difficult. So again, financing is a very important part of that. But really what it is that people need help to make complicated decisions and execute on those projects that they say, yeah, this makes sense, but boy, I haven't got enough time. It's too complicated. Well, no, if you put it together right, it's not complicated, can take the complexity out of it, and it's financed as well. So you start saving right away. And you talked about the different kinds of technology. Every province can make a different decision on its own energy policies, priorities, and whatever. And they can, some provinces, there's incentives for solar PV and not so much in others. It doesn't matter. The core of it is you invest in things that can save you money and lower your carbon footprint. And whatever province wants to support, that's what you finance, and that's what you put in your program, in your community, in your province.
Great, thank you, Bruce. We do have a question in the chat coming from Eric, which I see has been answered a little bit in the chat already. So are the municipalities, the Union of New Brunswick Municipalities and the Francophone counterpart in support of PACE? And we have an answer directly from the Association of Francophone Municipalities. So that's answered, but Jasmine and Bruce, I'm wondering if there's anything you want to share about what we've heard in conversation with municipalities or anything along those lines. I know a lot of the conversations are informal, but if there's anything that you want to share, now is the time about municipal support for PACE.
Yeah, I can speak to it, Joelle, and I have been talking about how we can work together to support the interest of the municipalities. And I think that what it is, because the concept is new to New Brunswick, it needs a careful staged examination and explanation. One of the things that just popped up was, well, what is PACE again? And that could be a 5-10 minute conversation all by itself, just sort of defining and walking through. And we didn't have time to go in great depth, but we think that there is an opportunity for municipalities in New Brunswick to explore this, understand it, look at all of the details of it, because it can get complicated. And at the same time, as the government of New Brunswick is looking at how it would want to implement PACE in New Brunswick, and this is an opportunity for them to take Canadian leadership on this by doing it in a really efficient, long-term vision kind of way, that we will work with municipalities so that when the government of New Brunswick says, yes, we're going to go ahead, then they'll be in a position to apply for the programs and to help support everything else that's going on. The amazing part of what the government of Canada did for FCM is by granting them the $300 million 2 years ago, it allows for an environment of a lot of support for communities going forward. And that's just an amazing amount of learning that's going on in a number of communities across Canada right now, using that money to develop programs, and New Brunswick can benefit from all of that as well.
So that's exactly what I was gonna say. So it's a great transition, but essentially we are, I would say the PACE landscape in Canada is still relatively new. It's something that emerged in the States, and Canada is starting to recognize the value, but the actors aren't necessarily mobilized. There aren't necessarily as many examples or large scale examples in Canada. So there are some provinces that have had PACE enabling legislation for a few years that are a little bit further ahead in those discussions, given that there isn't the PACE enabling legislation yet in the province of New Brunswick. I think that those discussions are a little bit fresher, they're a little bit newer. But at the same time, I think that as we see these examples start to gain more publicity across Canada, it's inevitable that there will be, you know, some more growing interest in the province of New Brunswick and municipalities as well. And what their role looks like in this kind of program, I think will vary. I think that there's some municipalities that will potentially want to sort of create their own program, administer their own program, be very hands-on. And then there are others who will be looking to support a program and participate in a program, but maybe be less involved in the day-to-day operations. And that's when the regional model becomes very interesting. So I think that those discussions are just emerging now in New Brunswick. I can't think of a single PACE program in the province, but I think especially with this paper, it's coming soon.
Yeah, great answer, everyone. Yeah, so step one, of course, is get that provincial enabling legislation. So that's what we're really pushing for right now. And so fingers crossed. Are there any other questions? I will open the floor again. Feel free to unmute your microphone or put a question in the chat if there's anything on your mind.
I'm Theo Lozier, working with in the field of biomass, and I was just wondering if wood pellets, because we work a lot with Joel Oliver at the Francophone municipalities. We had done 3 heating projects for different municipalities. So how this wood pellet heating system could work for throughout PACE.
So Theo, if you are you talking at a building level, right? Not a and you're talking about the thermal energy, not necessarily electricity and heat, right? You're talking
correct. Yeah. But normally it's to replace oil. Yeah. Because pellet is considered as carbon neutral.
Yeah. So, you know, when I was executive director of renewables efficiency and electricity in Nova Scotia, we came to grips with, you know, what was a sustainable biomass resource and so on and so forth. And I think that if you meet whatever sustainability criteria the government of New Brunswick sets on how you're sourcing your pellets in a sustainable fashion, then it becomes a perfectly acceptable way for people to heat their homes and to lower the carbon footprint. So as long as you get it right at the beginning, then these kinds of technologies are very, very positive. And certainly, if designed and allowed in a PACE kind of environment and framework for the province, there would be no problem at all to be able to finance it that way. Now, I don't know what Jasmine has to say in terms of the CEF program and the use of biomass, because I think we looked at it a little bit but didn't dive deeply. Jasmine, what role can biomass play?
So I haven't seen a project that's proposed this as one of the eligible renovation measures, but that doesn't mean that we wouldn't consider it. Essentially, we're looking to support programs that are looking to support deep retrofits or a combination of light and deep retrofits. So typically there would be a combination of measures included in what homeowners can finance. So all this to say, it can be part of, I think, your program design. It can be something if there's an appetite for it in the province and homeowners want to adopt this kind of technology in their homes and take out a loan to do that using the PACE mechanism, then that I don't see why there would be a conflict. It'd be very interesting.
Yeah, I think it's what's so great and can be challenging about PACE is there isn't just one PACE. And so we can set it up to work with the goals of the municipality, with the goals of, folks on this call. Feel free to reach out to the province as part of this consultation and say, I really want to see PACE and I really want it to include X, Y, and Z. It's a conversation we're all having together. So it's really great to get that feedback. And so we have another question in the chat from Eric. Is there a component of the PACE program for municipalities to use financing for energy efficiency projects on municipal buildings?
So I think Jasmine would say right now the CEF program is all about individual homeowners and residential buildings. But that is not to say that municipalities could not design ways that they would secure financing on their buildings. Although I'd have to say, just generally speaking, the idea of a municipality putting a lien on its own buildings that they would then access in case the municipality defaulted is sort of a circular argument, and perhaps not they wouldn't necessarily be the best users of a PACE concept. Municipalities can borrow at a pretty low interest rate these days anyway, and any half decent energy efficiency program is going to pay for itself. So it would be a good thing for them to invest in and make sense. Where everybody needs a lot of help is just understanding what the case is for the efficiency in their buildings and their community. We had one of the principals of a company that I co-founded, Pace Atlantic, to help municipalities do all of this. He and our general manager both worked for Killam Properties, which you would know in New Brunswick and certainly in Nova Scotia. But they operate buildings across the country, and they had to do a little bit of work internally to be able to build the case for capture management attention to make the investments in efficiency. Well, they did it so well that on an investor call very early on, when they were presenting why they should get $30 million to invest in apartment buildings at Killam Properties, the investors on the call, they went, well, this is great. We're going to make everybody, we're going to save money. This is going to be great for shareholders. Why don't we do them all? We'll do them all right away. And it's sort of, the light bulb goes on if you have the time to sit down and talk to people about the economic case, the business case for all of this to be done. And I'm talking about efficiency generally, not just one element of it. And certainly the way that the government of Canada is going right now, CMHC, they're making huge commitments to help finance buildings as well, and low-income housing and a bunch of other things. So there's lots of money out there. And I just close on this, is that increasingly there is a source of capital known as social and environmental responsibility investors and governance. They come under various names, but it all comes down to a lot of people with a lot of money who think it's really important that it be invested in something that will benefit their communities and the planet. And so there are there's sources of capital now that that didn't exist before. And the challenge is really to organize it and aggregate it, because these people aren't really looking at $20,000 projects. They're looking at, portfolios of 50, 100, 200, $300 million. And there's a lot of work going on right now into how to aggregate all of that. There's work being done through the Canada Infrastructure Bank to look at that. So again, I can't repeat often enough the time to look at efficiency, looking at efficiency programs, and looking at ways to finance all of this. Time is to act now, because this window won't be open forever, I don't think.
So it's true that we're kind of in a unique position, I think, right now in terms of our timing, the government's positioning and commitments and all that's going on. If you are, Eric, interested in a particular municipal building that you were hoping to retrofit, or if you were looking to build a new energy efficient municipal building, that is something that the Green Municipal Fund does fund in its other offerings. So whether it's exploring the business case, whether it's exploring how you're going to design the building, whether it's actually building the building, we do have a wide variety of funding offers available. So you can always reach out to me or one of my colleagues, and we can talk about it further. So that's more of a narrow view, on a more narrow take on things, but we do fund projects like that, just so you know.
Perfect. Thank you, Bruce and Jasmine. And we are coming up just, we've got a little less than 10 minutes left in our call today. And Annalise put a great question into the chat. What are the next steps? What is needed to move forward?
So I would say that some of the next steps are, if you're intrigued and you want to learn more, certainly both Jasmine and I and others who are helping to lead this are open to provide you with more information. So if you're in that information seeking stage still, what's this all about? Can we learn some more? This 1 hour is just the beginning of a conversation on that. I would say the second thing is that if you're already moved into, I'm with you, let's go do it kind of stage, the first thing to do is to convince others to sign on to the Efficiency Canada statement in support of adding this. And Kristen has just put it into the chat, and to join that. So put your voice forward, put your voice together with everyone else who's part of this, to say, this is an important topic that has to be raised to high enough on the provincial agenda that the government needs to think about it and to talk about it. And certainly it was referenced earlier that there is interest within the government. So let's move forward with that conversation. Third step is that once you've done all of that and you want to actually do more on your side, I would say it would be a matter of trying to speak to MLAs and to, if you have connections back through ministers' offices and so on and so forth, it would be really good to say, look, this is not only a good thing, but it should have some priority on designing a New Brunswick approach to this, and encourage them to meet with people who are interested in the topic and see how it would be best to be implemented in New Brunswick. We noted the 3 ministries that have a great deal of interest in this, but obviously the Premier's office is another outlet. And there's nothing wrong with, in your particular municipality and community, talk to your MLA and say, like, we think it's important, because they can then convey that breadth of support through to the ministries. And I'll just close on this. I was a civil servant for 20 years, spent a lot of time in that, advising and directing staff on preparing letters on behalf of ministers. And there's nothing better than to have a broad range of support, different voices from communities that are advocating for something that doesn't cost the government a dime. You don't get very many opportunities in a province to say, I'm going to enable something that's going to have $5 billion worth of economic activity in my province, and it's not going to cost the government a dime. Oh my, why wouldn't you do that? So go out there and try and find people to pay attention.
I would just add something. So the advocacy work is so important, and I think having a united front is so important, and doing everything you can to move this pace enabling legislation can be a real game changer in the province. And I would say at the same time, you can still start, assessing how you would, so you don't have to wait necessarily for pace enabling legislation to be adopted before moving forward. You can still start, having some conversations with certain stakeholders, start forming an idea about what you'd like to see in your community. You might want to do some consultation with residents to see if this is something that would be interesting to them. There's still, some funding available through CEF in case you did want to do a feasibility study and use some of that funding to advance the advocacy effort in New Brunswick. That's also an option. So I think that there's certain, I think the important piece is don't stop here. Keep going. Keep doing everything you can, and yeah, hopefully it'll lead to something in the short term.
Thank you. Well said, everyone. I think what's really exciting about this is it really feels possible. I think that the province is starting to hear these conversations. We've got a lot of folks who have already signed on. So a huge thank you to everyone who's already signed on to that submission, and huge thank you to everyone who's come out today just to learn more and hear what this whole PACE thing is. The more we can have these conversations and let the province know and municipalities know about this great opportunity. As Bruce said, it's a great opportunity for our communities. It just makes sense. So, let's get it done. Let's make sure everyone knows what the opportunity is and make it happen. Yeah, so with that, we're right around 11. So I am going to close things down now. Thank you, as I said, to Bruce, to Jasmine, to everyone who attended today. You will see that link that's been in the chat. I'll also send a follow-up email with some information for folks who are looking for some links, and feel free to keep that conversation going. You can reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat here really quickly, and Bruce and Jasmine, if you are able to do the same, then folks can reach out to us directly. And, right, so that's me. Hopefully there's not a typo in there. We love talking about this. We're big PACE nerds, so would love to hear any questions that folks have and keep these conversations going. And have a great rest of your day. I hope it's sunny and warm, but wherever you are in the country.